Alright guys, the building over my shoulder here should ring a bell with most of you anyways. Alright, this is of course Poolesville High School, and that's where we're going to pick up our story of schools in Poolesville. So the old school burnt, the one at the corner, and so for about a year students here had to go to the YMCA building for classes, and they then decided to build a new school here, and in 1906 it was under construction from January of 05 to January of 06. They built a school building right there. Now, they closed a lot of little schools to consolidate. First to 8th grade, it was built for 60 students. It had 89 when it first opened. They continued to add grades over the years, but they also continued to renovate the building. So in the 1920s, they actually built out closer to this section, which we're outside the auditorium here. They built a 2-story section here that connected to the old building, and that was done in 26 and 27. In the early 1930s, they actually expanded the school again. They got money through the WPA during the Great Depression, and they completely renovated the old building, and they added additional rooms to the building. They then used red brick. This is when they went to the red brick. So they chose red brick, and it's been used for most of the building since. Now I'm taking you around the section back here. We're still around the auditorium. And we're going to come up. You can see the little overhang. That is the art room. And that is probably part of either the late 1920s or the 1930 extension. What I want to show you is this little place over here. So let me give you a shot here. So there's the intersection. There's the auditorium we were just at. Come around here. This is the teacher's parking lot, and this is the teacher. This is the sort of the social studies wing of the building, and then you come to this staircase that is out of place. It runs down here. Now, unfortunately, I can't get in. This has been called the bomb shelter. This is what it was introduced to me as, but alas, it is not a bomb shelter. In either 1928 or in 1936, probably in 36, is when they built that. They decided to put in a modern sort of boiler system for the heat, and they decided to build it underground because they didn't have enough classroom space as it was, even with the expansion. And so they excavated that stairwell out and excavated under the building, and that was the boiler room, and it survived, but it's really hard, even with the architectural drawings, to figure out exactly what the oldest part of the school is and when it's from, because what they did over time is they just kept adding and adding and adding, and then eventually they ripped it down. So the auditorium, where the front office is, where guidance is, that is the newest addition. That's from 1978. So what we refer to as the new gym, what used to be the science wing, where rooms like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 are now, that was all added then. And this school sort of reopened as a junior and senior high school. So to go back, this was actually a 1st to 12th grade place. 12th grade being added in 1933, so the first class to graduate from Poolesville High School was 1934. The building was relatively old by then, at least parts of it was. And so that's kind of what you're looking at. We're going to go back up here and take a look at the back of the building here in a second. And we'll take a look at where the 1954, 56 extension was, and where the children came in when it was open. So you can see back through here. This is part of the 56 extension, as far as I can tell. So that would be, they built the media center and the cafeteria. And so I want to sort of show you the cafeteria real quick, and then we'll go from there. We'll talk more about this later, but when the school was integrated, they actually, on the first day of school, they had so many protesters out front. Now, a lot of the protesters are from out of town. There were a lot of out-of-state tags there. North Carolina, Virginia, West Virginia, and people had come out because this is one of the first places where they decided to integrate. Dr. Norris chose Poolesville for the first integration. So the bus, seeing everything going on out front, they came into the back, and they would have stopped right out here, and the kids that were carrying the first African American students went in through one of these sets of doors here. They weren't doors at the time. They were actually fire escape windows. Those big, heavy, they almost look like old screen doors. And so that's how they got them in, and that's where they went through. There used to be an ag program here, which is, I'm assuming, why we have a barn. This was the auto tech area coming up here. That program existed into the 1980s. And may have been part of the last addition to the actual building in 78, but there's the barn. The greenhouse was added. My understanding, it was added when the global program came. There was an old greenhouse in behind room 2, which was my classroom for part of the day. The stadium has been there since probably the 1920s or 30s. Obviously, the stadium has changed. It's greatly expanded. If you look at pictures from the 50s, it's expanded. So we're on the back side of the school now. There's your tennis courts. So we're on, part of this is the 78 extension, part of this is the 58 extension. The old gym is from the 1958 extension, from what I understand. Again, it can be hard to figure it out given what you have to look at. So we're going to continue our tour of the outside of the school since I can't get in. When eventually you do get in the school, you will notice that most of the walls, like they are in these buildings tend to be, are cinder block. But occasionally, if you look, you will see white brick. It's brick painted white. That signifies that at some point, that was an exterior wall. And they added on to it, and they painted it white, and made it part of the interior wall. So wherever you see that, pretty much wherever you see that, that's what you're looking at. So we're coming back around. So the problem with trying to answer the question, how old is Poolesville High School, gets difficult, because the other thing they didn't just add to the school building, they actually tore down. So the 1906 building is probably gone, or nearly all gone, and maybe traces of walls they kept. But they tore those down as they went through the renovation. So if you see pictures of this building from the time of integration and you look carefully at it, you'll notice it's different. And we know the building actually went further out. And the reason we know that is because of when they constructed this. This, of course, is the science wing, aka the Palace. It is the newest section of Poolesville High School, though it's getting on to 10 years now, I guess, since it's been built. So the plan originally, and I'm assuming it's the same, is to actually build a new building out here and attach it to the science building, so that the science building would stay as part of the building, and then the old building over here would be torn down and turned into a parking lot. Now, because of the importance of the integration of the school, there's been a little bit of a movement. Now, it hasn't caught much steam to save the building. The problem is, from a historical standpoint, what are you saving, right? Are you saving part of the building that was here in the 50s? Are you saving a part of the building that was here in 1910? Are you saving part of the building that was built in 78? The building has been so altered, and it's pretty difficult to figure out. Now, they did an asbestos abatement around 10 years ago, I guess. Came in over a couple of summers and sealed up all of that. But my last little story here is, while they were building this lovely wing, they parked the crane here, and you can see how the blacktop is a bit different. Well, the crane put out its little stanchions, and it tipped over and in. What had happened was that it had gotten over an area that was actually part of the probably in the 1930 extension, though it could have been where the old Coma School building was, which they moved here in its entirety and then attached it to the main school and tore it down later. But they had just bulldozed it, and they hadn't done a lot of stability stuff. And so when that crane went in, the blacktop broke through, and it didn't flip over and no one got hurt, but one of the sides came in and it exposed a corner of what used to be part of the building here. So, how old is Poolesville High School? Well, your first graduating class is 1934. There's possibilities that there are remnants of the 1906 building in there, but it'll be mere remnants. I don't know how old your school building actually is and how to explain it in any other way. And maybe somebody knew what they were doing and understood buildings and looked at the blueprints, they could probably figure it out. The blueprints, my understanding is, are locked away. In 2008, MCPS closed their sort of historic archives. They still have them, but they packed them away. And I don't believe they've ever reopened it. So, with that, that's it for the schools. We're going to go talk about Briar. I'm going to go up to Briarley Hall, which is video you're going to watch on the school, the female school and the military school in Poolesville.